Hey, thank you. Also, welcome from my side. So, Thomas Laubrock, my name. I think it's hard to pronounce if you're not used to it. Solution architect at Aqua. My background is security, not only cloud security. I work for different cloud security vendors, did incident response with bigger customers and so on and so forth. And now today I would like to give you a little bit in view how our threat response team is doing their research, what they have found over time, or only a few examples. I'll give you insights, and what are the takeaways from this, right? And why should we think about this a little bit different than maybe your existing security teams already working, because cloud is a little bit different. And I've simply put a few things together, and this is very high level. Every topic is discussable, right? So in the cloud native world, you have Linux. In the classic world, you have Windows. It's not true every time, I know. We focus on server workloads, and typically the other threat hunting is more focusing on user workloads, right? The environments in cloud native typically change every sprint, so fast changing, but very organized, right? The classic workloads stay somehow the same, even if they are changing. They get a little bit modeled. You may install an update, you patch something, but the general framing stays the same, right? So you need to keep these things in mind, right? If you think about server application and user applications, you typically attack a cloud-native application or any server application by push. So internet exposure, you reach out to the resource and try to land an attack. In opposite, nowadays on the end user's space, it is typically a pull. You try to do trick a user to click a link to download something, and then something happens. In opposite, you typically can't reach the user workload from outside, right? So we have kind of side attack channels. I already mentioned on the classic side the phishing, right? And kind of equivalent in the cloud native side is supply chain attacks. Maybe many of you remember the XZ vulnerability that was covered a few months ago. There are many other examples in this space where someone is tricking things to get into a dependency of your software and get a foothold in your final application. In the XZ space, it was SSH, but we saw this also with targeted attacks to dedicated software from vendors. You have, if you do your cloud native, you build up containers. Containers are contain a lot of open source because you carry half a Linux operating system with you. And of course, your application has typically a lot of dependencies on public repositories, right? This could carry also some risk, right? And standard vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. And in the classic world, you run more supported third-party applications, especially if you think on the endpoint. So this is simply the reason why I want to talk a little bit more about the special things in your cloud-native environment and what our threat response team found out there. So no presentation without a nice smart art where you have a nice cycle to bring some topics to the crowd, right? So how to hunt, how our strategy researchers start. They typically do a brainstorming. Hey, what could be a trigger? And then they do a research, right? And typically, if you do a research and try to find out if something is relevant. You need to do a big crawling or tooling to make to get an idea if it is a widespread attack or something like that. We will see this in our examples we will touch in a minute. So creating some tools, getting some evidence, collect the data, right? And then do publications, share these findings, right? This is important for us that we don't keep the things to us. Of course, security information, vulnerabilities, weaknesses should be shared to everyone, that everyone can fight against this. And then with this learnings, you get a new idea and you start the process from the beginning. This is in theory, right? And in other cases, you shortcut the cycle, you do something different, you restart at the same point, right? So don't take this slide too serious. It's simply to get an idea of how it is working, right? Or here's a kind of process how we collect things and how a process is working in our team Nautilus. So we run a lot of honeypots with typically cloud applications, yeah. To trigger some attacks, to monitor what is happening at the moment in the wild, right? We monitor code repositories. We drop also code repositories with open permissions to see what kind of supply chain attacks and so on and so forth getting launched. And of course, we monitor what vulnerabilities may occur. This gets into a threat intelligence. So every morning we aggregate this data from the day before, and then we try to pick something that is a trigger and do a research on top of it. And of course, with this data, you get sometimes also an idea, okay, and this software could be this vulnerability, so there could be an out-of-band information coming into the research, and then we generate output for this, right? Of course, as we said, we publish then the information, right? And of course, as I said, Aqua is a product vendor. We feed this information into our product to help customers to detect these threats, right? Also, we publish this, and typically we create tooling, right? So maybe many people are already using our open source tools. Trivy is a vulnerability scanner, and Tracy, it is more made for hunting. It is a eBPF threat hunting event management tool that is aware of container contexts, network traffic, and so on and so forth, so that you can load policies into Tracy as any EDR vendor would do, right? And then you have your own research tool. The very interesting thing is, for example, this Tracy can do network captures per container, per process name, which is typically very hard if you do, for example, this with TCP dump or something like, and especially if you have a container node, a Kubernetes node, you have a lot of workloads generating network traffic, and with Tracy you can limit this down or filter the recorded traffic by container, by process. This helps you a lot to get an idea what's going on, and of course we also record file changes, process starts, and so on and so forth. And then of course the team is there to drive our product innovations to generate out of this tooling offers that can help our customers to scale this or to do hunting and protect customers in enterprise environments. Yeah, enough about theory. Let's talk about a few examples that we have discovered recently or in the last months, right? Git bleed is one research of my colleagues. They found out a big issue in code repositories, if you think about supply chain attacks, are that someone typically accidentally checked in a secret into a repository, right? There are toolings like our open source Trivi that is able to detect this and, for example, block and commit into your Git repository if secrets are detected. But if it had happened, yeah, you have the problem. You have a commit with a secret in GitHub. What would you do? You try to delete the commit. But technically, it is not deleted. You know, Git is simply a chain of commits. And your Git repositories, Git is handling simply a bubble of commits and a handful of pointers, or pointers between these commits, right? And if you delete, your commit get simply no pointer anymore, but the commit is still in the database. So even if someone do a git clone, or if you do a git clone, you don't download this deleted commit, right? So if you do now an analysis of your code repository, you won't find any secrets anymore. So yeah, fine, it's good. But what happens if you do a git clone ---- mirror? Then all orphaned commits get also downloaded. And funny things, yeah, if you crawl a little bit around GitHub, we have checked the top 100 organizations with 50,000 repositories, and we found in 80% of the cases we found these orphaned commits containing secrets. Right? So, and we also digged a little bit deeper. We gain access to certain image registries, write access to certain image registries. So, for example, you could upload a new version of a software with a Trojan or something like, right? Of course, these 80% need to be taken with caution, because maybe these repository owners did their due diligence, has invalidated also maybe the API token that is in this orphan commit, and then even if you receive this, you can't use it anymore, right? And keep this in mind as a remediation action. If you checked in a secret into your Git repository, of course, delete the commit. This is fine, but invalidate the secret that you placed in, right? Make sure that it's not valid anymore. This is one of the easiest remediation steps, right? So a real thing, right? 80%. It is tough, I think. How can you find this out on your own, right? Of course, catch your Git repositories. Not do a git clone only, but git clone ---- mirror. Then you get the orphaned commits. And then there are a few tools outside, Git leaks and Trufflehuck. Both tools don't check out with the ---- mirror option if you simply give a repository name. So you need to really download the repository to your own system, and then you can run this command, and you get aware of secrets in these orphaned commits, right? Update, so because of our threat research and publication in our blog, Trufflehuck updated their software with more capabilities to detect secrets in these orphaned commits. So this is also nice that we see that the community, we provide something to the community, and the community takes this information and go further with it, right? And anyone get something out of it. Another example, headcrab. It is a Redis malware, and we have detected this with our honeypots, right? That we run around the world, right? And what had happened? So I think I don't need to explain a lot about Redis, especially if I want to manage my time. Everyone knows this is a kind of in-memory database used for caching, right? And Redis is extendable. You can load modules, binaries into Redis to add new functionality. Yeah? And what we have monitored that someone, the attacker, is spinning up another Redis server and register this Redis server as a replica of the original one. This, first of all, will leak information out of the Redis server. Of course, it's only possible if you have internet exposed your Redis server, right? But then, if the sync is established, they load their malware into their sync replica, and this will transfer the malware into your Redis, right? So they can inject this, and it is really hard to detect because this is typically not written to disk. It is in memory because it was made through the sync process, so very hard to detect. And you can do anything with the permissions of the Redis server in this case. Yeah? So a really nice way to get a malware into a server, not classic hacking via SSH or something like. You use the Redis protocol, with this you are able to take over a resource, right? As I said, highly stealthy. What they did with this malware, they extended the command set of Redis to control the Redis server, and of course they are Trojan. So this is a command and control channel. The command and control channel used Redis protocol, so it doesn't generate some network anomalies. Yeah? So you have still the Redis protocol as expected floating to your network, right? As I said, it is in memory. So typically a scan of an image of your installation or something like, or a snapshot would not detect these kind of malware. You need something that scans your memory for malware, and even then you need a known pattern, right? Otherwise, you are not aware that someone has loaded some malware into your environment, right? Of course, they were really advanced. They cleared the shell history. They do log removals that you are not detecting that the module was loaded. Of course, or they redate file creation timestamps to don't leave a trace. Yeah? So it is a really nice attack that we have discovered here. I don't want to read through this additional command that were introduced. Here's, of course, simply a proof that the network communication is still Redis protocol. And of course, they have manipulated some existing Redis command that do a little bit more. I don't want to go deep into it. And what was the goal of the campaign? The attacker simply used this module to mine cryptocurrency. Right? And over time, you saw how the wallet that we have identified has generated money. Not much, yeah, $1,600 in the time frame we have monitored, but $1,600, right, or euros, right? Nice, right? So why have we called this headcrab? Yeah, because the developer has added a mini block into its malware, right? So, and he has called it headcrab, so we called the attack headcrab, right? And another funny thing is that he was inspired by a blog article from us that has written about a vulnerability in Redis, right? Yeah, he gave us some credits that with this information he was able to generate this malware. Funny thing. Later on, he also published his email address, so we were in communication with him. So really funny story. If you talk to my colleagues that did this communication, then you can talk days about this, what had happened. Of course, we have developed, as I said, we have Tracy as open source program, right? So we have developed pattern for this threat hunting tool, Tracy, to do detections, right? So if you run Tracy or our product, then you are able to detect these kind of attacks now. We try to write this pattern as generic as possible, so on a behavior basis and not on a pattern basis, as I said before. Each other attack should be detected with Tracy, right? Mitigations, right? Don't. If you need to expose your Redis, yeah, don't leave this port unauthenticated. It is a simple advice. It should be very obvious, but yeah, as we said, as we have seen, it is very common that you find this in the wild. Yeah, the replication command, you can disable this in Redis if you don't know if you don't need this, right? Depending on your setup, right? And there's also the ability to sign Redis modules if you need some, and then of course you can tell Redis only accept signed modules, and then nobody is able to extend your Redis with unknown functionality that says it's friendly, right? Of course, there are other constraints that you can give in Redis. Of course, you should run Redis with least privileges and so on and so forth. As we know, this is true for any service. I think in the container world, this is pretty easy. You can if you run a dedicated container in a namespace with not root permissions, you can at least ensure that nobody can breach out of the container and harm you more than stealing a little bit of CPU and generating cryptocurrency. Yeah. No. Also more. Yeah, of course they are. Very important to each of these researchers, we have published, of course, a blog article. So if you really want to go deep, how to configure these things, how to prevent such kind of attacks, read this blog. You get command line snips or config snips that you can use in your environment to secure these things. Right? So. I think this attack is really advanced, right? With hiding things, using Redis protocol, and so on and so forth. Nobody, or I'm unsure how many of you are aware of that Redis can load these kind of additional modules on the fly, and this is a way to put malware into your environment, right? Of course, I already shared this remediation advices, how to make sure that you are not vulnerable to this special attack. Another thing, I said we try to share with the community, of course, our threat research, right? Like for example, headcrab, git bleed, and many more. It's typically we are releasing 10 to 20 this kind of researches a year. But we also create tooling, right? And I mentioned Tracy several times. So it's an eBPF event tracer made to catch malicious behavior. But everyone who did kernel level analysis of behaviors maybe found maybe found himself in, hey, these are a lot of events. How can I manage this? How can I handle this? We are all good in grep and other tools to find out data. But our threat researchers had an idea. So if you do network forensics, you typically start Wireshark, right? And we have created a plugin to Wireshark called TracyShark, which adds a new kind of network adapter to your Wireshark that receives these kernel events from Tracy. And finally, you can really use, hopefully, it's readable, I think, right? Wireshark is so flexible that you can display simply different tables, not only network source destination, right? So we feed up these events into Wireshark that you can use the common things like getting an event and get all the details in the below details dialog. Everyone or many of you may know how Wireshark looks like. You can load these Tracy policies and then you get markers on your events, what could be a malicious behavior and so on and so forth. You can use these classic filters that you have in Wireshark also for these kernel events, right? This makes it very, very powerful to drill down into this data, mangle this data, and find often the needle in the haystack, right? So this is also a contribution of our threat response team to the community, that they can handle these kind of kernel events far more reliable. Last but not least, what can I do as a security responsible person, as a DevOps person, to lower my attack surface, right? How can I prevent myself, or how do I get idea if something goes wrong in my environment, right? And we have created this graphic here, and it starts with the initial access layer. Of course, don't expose services to the public internet if not needed, right? it makes a lot of sense, right? But sometimes you have to. Sometimes you may get attacked from internal, right? Maybe someone attacked the Windows host or a user system in your environment, and then try then reaching out to the services into your internal network. But there are a lot of tools outside that do scanning, get your exposure. Of course, harden your software. Make sure that you don't run known vulnerabilities in your environment, right? You can use Trivia or open source tool to do image scanning, right? And then on the execution phase, so we already said, do Redis hardening was one takeaway of the headcrab thing, right? Make sure that your containers only contain things that are really required. Limit, for example, exec into the containers. This will stop lateral spread. Or if you can't block, monitor these kind of events, because this could be a trigger that someone is doing nasty things in your environment. Yeah? Of course, do network segmentation or segmentation in namespaces and so on and so forth to make sure that if something goes south, it is encapsulated in as small as possible area. And the other steps are also make sure with containers it's often pretty easy to run these containers with read-only. file systems, and you overwrite this configuration each time the container is starting. This makes persistence far harder than in opposite if you load your configuration from a persistent volume claim that is read-writable. Otherwise, monitor these kind of configurations if someone is touching this, because in a cloud-native world, you do a known, you do a defined update process, so you should be aware when configurations are changing, right? So you can get these trigger if someone touching configuration, if files are changing, you should be aware of this in most cases, right? And then, of course, do classic monitoring. Check your containers for malware in memory, real-time malware protection. Use Tracy and other tools to monitor malicious behavior. Make them alerting you if something malicious going on, and then you can start your research from this point, right? Again, also this is shared with everyone, and this is my last slide here, and maybe there are a few questions.
Thank you. Round of applause, please. If there are any questions, scan the QR code. I do have one. So interesting that you have a team that goes through the process of trying to entice attackers so that you can find vulnerabilities like what you talked about Redis. I'm assuming you have everything on your blog. Aqua has a blog post or a blog site. Yeah,
for each and every topic, we have a dedicated blog. It is lengthy, as I mentioned. The last slide contains the URL, but it is blogaquasec.com. It's easy to find in the internet. Google is helpful, as everyone, as every time, right?
Cool. Okay. I need to check because I need to moderate. Haven't got any questions, but if you do come up with any questions, Aqua has a booth. Obviously, can talk to them over there. Thank you again, Thomas.
Thank you.